Senate do receive the report of the Joint Senate and May I move that the Senate do receive the report of the Joint Senate and the House of Representatives Committee on Finance on the 2020-2022 Medium Term Expenditure Framework, MTEF, and Fiscal Strategy Paper. Mr. President, I so move. Other documents that were consulted or used for the purpose of this consideration. And if you go there, you have the budget review, which has to do with the review of 2019 budget, which was given in a summarized form, and also the revenue inflows and performance for 2019 to date is contained on page 6. On page 7, we have the expenditure outcome for 2019 to date, which has to do with how far the government has been able to defray some of the expenditure as contained in the Appropriation Act of 2019. Mr. President, very distinguished colleague, in 6.0, page 8 precisely, I have the Medium Term Expenditure Framework, MTEF, and the Fiscal Strategy Paper. And we want to put this into a summarized from that. Following the successful deployment of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan 2017 to 2020 ERGP to restore the Nigerian economy to the path of growth, the 2020-2022 MTEF FSP will signal the direction of government priorities and programs to accelerate growth, diversification, and social inclusion. 6.1 contains the fiscal strategy for 2022 and 2020 to 2022, and all the indicators, assumptions upon which the fiscal strategy and the FSP is predicated upon is listed in 6.1. In 6.3, we have the summary of 2020 revenue generation and the expenditure framework of the federal government, clearly stated in a summarized form. I will want to go from there to 7.0, which is page 10, and contain the findings of the committee. I start with 1, the crude oil. The crude oil receipts account for 50% of the federal government revenue and about 90% of the Nigerian foreign exchange earnings. Therefore, crude oil production and export will continue to have important implications on the federal fiscal operation. Over the last 3 years, crude oil production averaged 1.92 million per barrel. However, following consultation with stakeholders, crude oil production is estimated at 2.18 million per barrel, 2.2 million per barrel, and 2.3 million per barrel in 2020, 2021, and 2022. 2. It is noted that the oil prices has generally been rising since April 2016. Burning light crude oil price rose from an average of $43 per barrel in 2016 to 56.2 in 2017 and 72.1 in 2018, partly due to geographical tension. In 2019, burning light crude oil price increased steadily from January average of $60 per barrel, a 6 years high, well above $70 per barrel between April and May 2019. It is noteworthy that the volatility of crude oil market and fluctuating prices require constant review and forecast. 3. The non-oil revenue for 2020-2022 MTEF is budgeted to be as follows: 1.8 trillion for 2020, 2.2 trillion for 2021, and 2.3 trillion for 2022. 4. The committee observed during the public hearing on the 2020-2022 MTEF and FSP that the salaries and remuneration for the proposed recruitment of 30,000 personnel in police, army, immigration, and civil defense was not captured. 5. The total VAT proposed in 2020-2022 MTEF FSP document, accounting to 2.3 trillion, can only be realized after the amendment of the finance bill is passed into law by the National Assembly, most especially as it affects the VATable items. 6. The committee frowned at the attitude of Central Bank of Nigeria for under-disclosure of the e-collection of stamp duties. 7. The committee also noted that 10 government-owned enterprise budgets will be presented along the national budget. These government-owned enterprises include FAN, NCAA, NIMASA, NPA, NAMA, Shippers Council, NDIC, and National Communications Commission, NCC. 8. The committee observed that the activities of the NNPC as it relates to the cost of production is shrouded in secrecy, and the direct deduction of cost from revenue without recourse to relevant agency is unacceptable. 9. The committee observed that the exchange rate of 305 is maintained over the past 3 years, and also note that the GDP is currently standing at 2.93% and inflation rate of 10.81%. 10. The most of revenue-generating agencies have failed to comply with the relevant extant law of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which stipulates payment of 80% of the operational surplus to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. 11. The committee observed that the federal government is stepping up investment in health and education to fill the skill gap in the economy and meet the international targets set under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. The federal government is earmarking 1% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund to finance the basic healthcare provision, funds to be classified as a statutory transfer. Federal government believes that investing in people is a core objective of the ERGP. Government is taking steps to enhance human capital development, particularly in health, education, and social intervention programs in order to reduce poverty. 12. Based on the joint IMF World Bank Debt Sustainability Framework, which has a debt GDP threshold of 56% for countries in Nigeria peer group, Nigerian debt is expected to remain sustainable within the MTEF period. This implies that Nigerian debt GDP ratio of 19.39% can afford it to expand its borrowing limit, and as at 31st December 2018, Nigerian public debt stock is valued at $24.387 trillion, representing $79.4 billion, rising at an average of 12.24% per annum. With regards to the 2020 fiscal year, the estimated budget deficit is 1.70 trillion, and it will largely be financed through borrowing, as it has been the tradition, while also additional financing of 252 billion will be derived from privatization profit and 328.13 billion from loans secured for specific developmental projects. The committee further observed that the Nigerian current debt profile is not as alarming as expressed in some quarters, but within the threshold of 3% as contained in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Recommendation. The committee recommends as follows. Following intensive engagement with NNPC and relevant information obtained during the session, the committee recommends the adoption of 2.18 million per barrel as the daily production output in 2020, in view of concerted effort by NNPC and security agencies to combat the menace of oil theft, vandalization. The 2.18 million per barrel will be realizable. 2. The committee recommends the adoption of $57 per barrel as crude oil benchmark price for fiscal year 2020. 3. The revenue target of Nigerian Customs Service of 942.6 billion for 2020 should be increased to 1.5 trillion as a result of the performance of the Nigerian Customs Services in the last 9 months. With 3 months still outstanding, the Nigerian Customs Service revenue as at September stood at 1 trillion naira against the budgeted figure of 969 billion naira for the year 2019. The Joint Committee commends the Nigerian Customs Service for exceeding the targeted revenue despite the global economic challenge and closure of Nigerian borders. 4. The sum of 557.4 billion from the revenue increment of the National Customs Services be used to reduce borrowing by 200 billion and increase capital expenditure, thereby decreasing the size of the budget deficit from 1.7 trillion to 1.5 trillion, and also increase the total capital available to MDA by 357 billion from 1.01 trillion to 1.37 trillion. The exchange rate of 305 should be maintained for economic stability, while more work should be done by the Honorable Minister of Finance and all his economic advisor and a team on improving the economic growth by increasing the GDP and reducing the inflation rate to a single digit. 6. Savings on income accruing from the increase of the benchmark account amounting to $172 billion, which represents the federal government portion of the $2 added to the benchmark, be used to pay salaries and emolument of the proposed 30,000 new employees. 7. Proper investigation be carried out on the e-collection stamp duty domiciled with the Central Bank of Nigeria for the past year so as to show probity and accountability and, of course, increase the revenue base of the country. 8. Immediate amendment of the Nigerian Petroleum Act on the production sharing contract and the IOC. 9. Proper investigation be carried out on the NNPC so as to ascertain the actual costs associated with the joint ventures agreement. 10. More government-owned enterprise budget be added to the nation's budget to ensure proper checks, balances among the federal government agencies. 11. Debt Management Office should put more concerted effort and strategy in managing the foreign and the local debt. 12. The total expenditure of the federal government should be increased from 10.002 to 10.729.4 trillion. Page 15. 13. National Assembly should expedite action on the passage of the finance bill, which will be brought alongside with the national budget into law for easy implementation of the 2020 budget, most especially in the area of VAT. 14. The committee called for an urgent review and amendment to the Fiscal Responsibility Act and various laws of the revenue-generating agencies to align with the current realities. 15. The committee recommends earmarking 1% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund to finance the basic LTR provision to be classified as statutory transfer. 16. The committee recommends the adoption of 1.5 trillion as the amount for the new borrowing as a result of reduction of 200 billion, which was sourced from the increase of revenue target of the Nigerian Customs Services. However, borrowing must be project-tied. In borrowing more, government must remain focused and ensure it uses it to fund critical projects that will increase the productivity and contribute to the financing of such debt. Conclusion. The Joint Committee of both chambers expressed appreciation to the leadership of the National Assembly and also thank the entire member of the committee and the Secretariat who work assiduously to ensure timely submission of this report. Thank you, Mr. President.